much of our unknowing. Because they're inaccurate definitions. So knowing who we are, like knowing what love is not the same kind of knowing that we think about when we think about knowing. It's not knowing about. It's the knowing that comes of beingness. It's the knowing of this other mysterious thing called love. And that's why we have a course of love. The power of love moves into us in two ways. And the first way is as a new way of knowing. The power, it's a way of knowing that can't be learned, and that's different than what can be learned. It's the kind of knowing that allows us to feel, experience, and be who we are directly. It's a new way of knowing that's intimate, and it has to be experienced. The second power related to the first is that it allows us to realize or make real our existence in union and relationship, and in this way to actually create union and relationship as a new state of being. Experiencing the reality of unity creates unity as a new state of being. When we touch unity, we touch a certainty of knowing that is beyond these selves of form. And Jesus is basically saying, what good is it if you don't bring it forward? And I believe he is saying that this bringing forward, this interaction, this cooperation with what flows to us from unity is the way the self of form is elevated. We elevate the self of form by claiming, actually claiming, living and breathing by the certainty of unity. To change from a way of knowing that remains largely in our minds, that relies on our intellect and on what can be taught and learned, is to change our minds, change the world, and become creators of the new by being new. So who are we? In what way can we come to know who we are in these human forms and also in the spirit that animates us? You know, how do we come to know who we are? And what does the Course of Love say about this? And really, the whole book is about this. The whole book is about who we are and coming to know who we are. But I'll just share what resonates most with me and what I've come to learn from experience. And you know, the word experience or variations of it are used in A Course of Love more than 500 times. And the first thing I want to say is knowing is an experience. You know that old hymn, Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so? That's not the kind of knowing any of us want, is it? Honestly. And yet we still sometimes seek that, you know? But Jesus talks in the Bible, in Course of Miracles, in Course of Love, about the knowing of the little children. And the knowing of the little children is pre-language knowing. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and boy, do you ever see that in a grandson or in a baby, how much they learn in those first couple of years before the onset of language. But in general, children learn from innocence and wonder and curiosity, and it's a way of discovery. So Jesus calls us back to that in A Course of Love. But there's all kinds of ways of knowing, and some of them are physical. It's like when you first see or hear something that you would before have believed that you could not see or hear, that calls you to a new way of knowing. And that was the way it was for me. My first experience with sort of going beyond the senses that I knew to be my natural self, or what I thought was my natural self, was when I heard from the angel piece. This was before A Course of Love. And I was in the basement of my 100-year-old home, not very far at all from a cat litter box. And this angel said, "Smell the sweetness." And I had this scent, a powerful, thick scent like lilies waft over me. It's like, oh. I had just heard and smelled two things that were, to me, impossible. But there's so many ways of knowing that come from the physical that we don't, they're so common that we think they're nothing, I think. It's like, okay, goosebumps. You've known goosebumps since you were a child, right? And it wasn't always because of fear. It's like, there's a thrill in the air, and it's like, ooh, ooh. And I still get goosebumps all the time. And I mainly get goosebumps when I'm in conversations with my friends. And there is something that is said that reveals something to me in a new way, in a way I never thought of before. And it's like, ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. And now it's like they're right here. You know, it beats me why, but it's like, oh, I got goosebumps. And every time that I say this to a friend, my friend will say, oh, almost every time, I do too. I have goosebumps too. Goosebumps. And what about tears? How many of us don't get tears in our eyes when we hear the truth? I do all the time. Oh, here's one you might not have heard of. I don't know if this is common or not. I call it zingers. I'm not getting too many nods on that one. So this is like I'm getting something really profound. And it's like the zing right up the middle of my scalp. And I'll go, ooh, I'm getting zingers. And I'll start to do this in my hair. But a lot of our ways of knowing feel a lot like thought. You know, I mean, there's ideas. And both courses say ideas leave not their source. I mean, we have no reason to disregard ideas now. We're going into the new. We need all of our ideas. But sometimes thought is so wispy. You know, it's like it's standing out here like a phone number that you can't remember. And it's bugging you. And it's like, you feel like, what is that? Some kind of a knowing that's calling to your attention. And my promptings that I just told you about, what's going on? And this one about being called to be all that we are. Those were things that wouldn't leave me alone. They needed me to bring them into their time of fullness. And these, you know, I just want to bring it into kind of a normal setting because these grand ideas that change the world could come that way if we let them in. And sometimes, you know, it's a knowing that's just it's a big old bang of a knowing. And it's like we know something in an instant that we didn't know before. And it's important. And we want to capture this thing that we know that we didn't know before. And yet it's like it defies our thinking. If we try to think about it too much, we might lose it completely. And then you only know that you knew something that you now don't know. And it's like if you can hang out with it a little bit, you might eventually be able to feel that you got what the sense of knowing came to say to you. And even then, you might not be able to think about it or convey it to someone else properly. But this is still a new way of knowing that has entered you. This is the knowing from unity. The knowing from unity comes into us. It could be felt knowing. And I love it that Jesus talks about felt knowing in a course of love, and he includes talents. I think that's so cool. He includes talents as felt knowing. And he has a good list here. Talents, ideas, as imagination, inspiration, instinct, intuition. This is knowing that comes to us as calling. All these ways are knowings that come to us outside of the pattern of learning. So suddenly we have validation for all these ways of knowing that have meant so much to us, and maybe we were taught to disregard. And in the way of Mary, which is part of the dialogues, we hear through unity and imagination, we create a new pattern and begin to weave it into the web of reality. Oof. This is good stuff. I had an experience as I received chapter 31 of the course. And if you have read it and you read that chapter again, or if you are yet to read it, you might notice that several times in that chapter, the words "in truth" are italicized. And they're italicized because when I was receiving that chapter, I felt as if I was inside of the truth. Can I explain it to you any better than that? That feels the most true to my experience, to say I was in the truth. I could say I was surrounded by it, but nothing describes it any better. And sometime after that, I had an experience of being inside God's knowing. And I can't explain that any better either. But these two examples are very consistent with these new ways of knowing. And it's another reason that we're not going to our minds. What our minds can't understand gets us in a pickle. And what our minds can't understand, our hearts can accept with ease. Or at least Jesus says with ease. It takes me a while sometimes. But the simple words I use when I'm feeling that way is, "Where is my heart?" It's not an exercise that's in the course, but it works for me. Because that reminds me that my heart will find the ease in this through acceptance. And the thing is, these things that we feel in this new way of knowing are so true, they blow everything else out of the water. Isn't that really true? When you feel something like that, you feel it so deeply, it touches your heart so strongly, that this is more true than anything that you thought you knew. Even if you can't convey it, even if you don't fully understand it, it's because this has entered you. Unity, too, is an experience. As Pierre Desjardins said, to be more is to be more united. When we make the move from feeling separate, we move more and more into our wholeness. And in wholeness, our feminine ways of knowing return. So we have a wholeness of the feminine and the masculine. Course of Love is full of feminine ways of knowing, feminine imagery.
Attention please. The signal you just heard has been determined to be accident inconvenient. The system is being reset and the hotel is returning to normal operation. Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
Turn the light on a little bit down.
One of the big things in A Course of Love is receptivity. And receptivity comes of union. It's really what's cultivated by A Course of Love. A Course of Love cultivates our receptivity. And receptivity is being in union, in relationship, not acting.
Have your attention, please. The signal you just heard returns to be accidental. We apologize for any inconvenience. The system is being reset and the hotel is returning to normal operations. Thank you for your patience.
Mari, I'm so sorry.
Do you think this is a sign? I mean, it's so funny coming here, you know, we talked to a theme, and coming to speak now, and I know this will change in the future, but when I come to speak now, I don't know how many people will know about A Course of Love, and I want to kind of try to cover a lot of things, and maybe this is a sign. Maybe there are other things you want me to talk about. I'm willing to do that.
You're doing great, Mari.
I'm doing great.
All right, you guys, be more expressive, please. I mean, I was looking out there going, I haven't got a clue if I'm doing okay or not. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for saying this is okay. All right, so, receptivity. And this one is kind of dear to my heart because, you know, we've done a lot of following of Spirit and giving, you know, Spirit the, Spirit told me to do this. And I could say, Jesus told me, but we don't want to go through life doing that, do we? You know, Spirit told me, Jesus told me. So, we're in union and relationship with this creative force. We are. You know, it's like when Jesus, when I thought my part was going to taint what Jesus wanted done. We're not going to taint anything. We're needed as who we are. Each and every one of us are needed as who we are to bring what we are and what we have to the world. So that's one of the things I wanted to be sure to say today. So we'll see. I'll kind of go through and say, what are the things I really wanted to say? Sometimes what comes of unity is a calling. And they're called callings because basically we feel ourselves to be called to something through what comes to us. And this is the way Jesus approached me in my calling, was through a dream. And I had this dream in 1997 while I was still working at the University of Minnesota. And the dream told me, you can no longer sell your mind for money. Your mind now belongs to God. And that was really the start of everything. It was, dreams are actually a way of knowing too. From the earliest of times, dreams have been seen as revelation, but we kind of discount that now. But one that says something like that to you is pretty hard to discount. But when we're first called, this is often when we struggle the most. And it's because, what I see is because of a couple of things. And the first is that a call always calls us to change. A call will call us to change. And I had the feeling that this dream was calling me to leave my job. If I couldn't sell my mind for money, I should leave my job, right? But I loved my job. I told you already I was raised a Catholic. I had only been on my spiritual path a short time, and I came onto it because of two women with whom I worked. And they were really the women where I learned the lesson, or discovered what is to discover from that favorite quote of mine. You have to share who you are to be who you are. these two women friends that I worked with became pregnant together, and one lost her baby daughter Grace when she was 5 weeks old. And the way that we shared during that time was the most precious sharing I have ever experienced, because it was so vulnerable, and it was so sacred. This was about a baby who had died, and this was grief, and yet by sharing, we had so much joy and compassion, and we knew each other so deeply. So this is what I had going on at work, was this relationship that I didn't want to leave. A call can also become a struggle because we feel unworthy. Now, when my call came, I was actually feeling pretty good about myself. I'd been with these women for a couple of years, and I was feeling pretty good. And then, when your call comes, it's like then, well, I thought I had every reason in the world I was unworthy to be called by God. And I think this is kind of common. When we're called, when we feel we're asked to do something, we can really feel that we are not up for it. And what we have to remember, always, is that Jesus meets us where we are. That's one of the truest things I know. Jesus always meets me where I am, and I think he always meets every one of us where we are. So Jesus asks, what willingness is it that you are asked to give? It can come in many manners and be given many forms. It can be called a willingness to change your mind, or to allow yourself to be open to new possibilities. It can be called a change of heart, or a willingness but to, for a little while, withdraw your fear and your protection from it. But what this willingness really does is allow your call to be sounded. Your call to be loved and to be loved. It is a willingness to receive love from your source and to be loved for who you are. Is this so much to ask? That's from the Course. But the toughest part of being all that we are is being our human selves, loving ourselves for who we are, not denying any of the traumas that may have left us feeling broken, but restoring ourselves through love and resurrection. Not losing ourselves to Jesus, but being like Jesus. Differentiated from God, but not separate from God. Human, but also divine. Keeping the heart of who we are, but also being in union and relationship. These calls are calls to your heart through your heart's language of yearning and desire. Longing, Jesus says, is our proof of love's existence. Longing is our proof of love's existence. And he also says that the difficulty with every curriculum that sought to teach the truth was that it first needed to bring you into a state where you could learn the truth. And that state is the state of longing and desire. And I think a lot of people would rather avoid longing and desire, or feel like something's wrong when they have a sense of longing and desire. But that's where my call led me, to great longing and desire. Calls are a way of knowing that always asks for a response, always. In his book called Callings, Greg LaVoy says, a call is only a monologue. A return call creates a dialogue. In the treatises, Jesus says, your response reveals who you are. Your response. So our own unfolding requires that we be in constant dialogue with what is calling us. This course calls us with a call that sounded in our hearts, and the dialogues is about our response to being called. You see my name on the cover of the course as the first receiver, but inside Jesus calls each of you receivers. You're all called, and you're all called to respond. And if you don't feel that, you might be trying too hard, which is really easy. It's like the things that are difficult about this course are the things that we think ought to be easy. Like we think it ought to be easy not to try. It's not so easy. Not so easy to leave off the effort. But you know, this is the greatest beauty of A Course in Love, in my view, that without teaching us to do so, through the very structure of the book, through the way Jesus talks to us, he brings us to where love and blessings come out to meet us. We're not going after it anymore. It's coming to meet us. As receivers, Jesus asks us to become familiar with the well of spirit. We each have access to the well of spirit from which all answers are drawn. The well of spirit is described in this way. If you can fully accept the way in which these words have been given and received, you will see that you can fully accept the way of unity. You have been told, you give, and you receive from the well of spirit. What might this mean? How might this relate to the giving and receiving of these words, to the discussion we have been having about the body and the elevation of the self form? How might this relate to your desire to make a contribution and answer your calling? How does this relate to your desire to know what to do? These answers lie within you at the heart or center of yourself, as do all answers. Your desire to make of me a teacher is the same as your desire to make your thoughts into answers that will provide you with direction. I really like that one, because I think we all expect our thoughts to do that. You dare not as yet turn to your own heart for answers. Yet your heart is the well of spirit from which true answers are drawn. Your heart is a full well, a wellspring from which you can continually draw, with no danger of ever drawing an empty bucket. You need never thirst again when you've accepted this. You need never seek again for answers when this has been accepted, because you will know and fully accept that the answers lie within. Well, our receivers are no longer turned out. The dialogues don't tell us how to respond, but they make us aware that we're called and that we have a response that needs to be given. We have entered the dialogue. And creation, Jesus says, is a dialogue. And we are too, in dialogue, create the new. And in Course in Miracles, we hear even forgiveness is not the end. Forgiveness does make lovely, but it does not create. When the memory of God has come to you in the holy place of forgiveness, you will remember nothing else, and memory will be as useless as learning, for your only purpose will be creating. That's in A Course in Miracles. So this says to me that Jesus always was suggesting the end of learning and our movement to being creators.